Hey everyone! Today's pattern is one of my oldest patterns that has been a staple at my market tables for close to 10 years or so now. It's for my Oddish plushie, and you can see I've got a big basket full of them here because I'm gearing up for a market here really soon. So while strolling through memory lane on my blog, I happened to run into an old photo from 2016, which was one of my very first markets, of these little guys, and thought, hey, why not share this one so other folks who are looking to gear up for farmers markets this summer can potentially have some on their tables too. So if you're just a Pokemon fan and want to add one of these little guys to your collection, or if you're looking to add some cute nerdy things to your crochet market table, let's go ahead and dive in with what you're going to need to make this little guy. So first up for materials, you're going to need worsted weight yarn in blue and green. I like to use this true blue color here, and then sort of this key lime color as well for the leaves on my plushie. Naturally, you can substitute weight and color as you see fit. Just remember, any adjustment to weight will also require an adjustment to accessory and hook size. So keep it in mind as you're making those substitutions. Next, because I use worsted weight yarn and I feel comfortable using a 4mm hook, that's the size that I recommend starting with for your plushie. Again, if you're using a larger weight yarn or a smaller weight yarn, you'll need to adjust this accordingly. You also need your standard arsenal of things that you use to make amigurumi. So I've got my cactus with various pokey bits that have my stitch markers, my yarn and tapestry needles, anything that I'd need. I also need a pair of scissors and some stuffing. These are just your normal amigurumi items that you'll need pretty much for any make that you do. For my Oddish plushie, I like to use these 12mm painted safety eyes. I went ahead and put a link in the video description if you'd like to use the same brand that I use. Again, you don't need to use this same brand, and if you've chosen to use a larger weight yarn, you may need a larger size safety eye anyway. And then optionally, if you'd like to turn your Oddish plushie into a faux plant, you can see I've got him snug here in this terracotta pot. You'll want to pick up one of these 2-inch pots. I've got a couple of links in the video description below on places that I've picked these pots up from. Again, if you've adjusted the weight of your yarn though, you may need a bigger size pot. So just plan ahead if you're adjusting anything in the pattern. Alright, that wraps up materials. Let's head to navigation next. So I wanted to point out something that I've started doing to make it a little easier to navigate my patterns. If you are on desktop and you scroll along the seek bar, you'll see I've added chapters for basically every single round of my pattern. You can also access them by clicking more in the description and scrolling down and clicking view all next to chapters. That will make it so you can access the chapters over on the right hand and go forward or backwards at your own pace inside of each pattern. That way, if I'm working too quickly or working too slowly, you can skip ahead or behind in the pattern as you need. If you're watching my video on mobile, you can do the same thing. All you'll need to do is click the video itself and then pull up the seek bar. And then from there, you can scroll. It's a little harder to do, but you can scroll to chapters. If you'd like to view all the chapters, you can click right here once you stop scrolling and seeking, and it'll pull up a separate pane where you can view the chapters individually, just like you would on desktop. Additionally, you can click more to open up the video description, and then scroll down and click view all on chapters, just like on desktop. So I hope that helps you navigate the patterns a little easier. Alright, so we're going to start with the body and with this blue colored yarn. And the first thing that we need to do is form a magic ring. Alright, so I have my magic ring formed and I'm ready to start in on round 1, where I need to place 6 single crochet stitches inside of the magic ring. So I'm also going to mark that first single crochet stitch. Alright, once you've got your first 6 single crochet stitches, you can pull the tail of your magic ring to close off that first round, which sets us up for round 2, where we're going to increase in each stitch all the way around. So to increase, we'll put 2 single crochet stitches in one stitch from the previous round. So I'll go through my first stitch, add my first single crochet stitch, and then finish my increase by adding a second single crochet stitch in that same stitch from round 1. And I'll continue increasing in each stitch all the way around, giving me 12 stitches total at the end of round 2. Alright, that was my last increase for round 2. Before I move on to round 3, I'm going to give my magic ringtail one final tug, flip my work over, and then trim it, not off, but short. And then discard this tail. I find that keeps my magic ringtail out of my way as I keep working around. Okay, so we're ready for round 3. And round 3, we've got some new instructions that are inside of asterisks up at the top left. So what that's saying is that we need to repeat everything between the asterisks 6 times total to have 18 stitches at the end of round 3. So in our first stitch, we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch, and then of course remark that as it's the first stitch of the round. The second part of our asterisks say to put an increase in the next stitch. So that's everything inside of the asterisks once. We're going to repeat that pattern of 1 single crochet increase 6 times total, so another 5 repetitions. So we have 18 stitches at the end of round 3. So 1 single crochet stitch, increase, just continue repeating that. Alright, so there was my last increase, which takes me to round 4, where we got another set of asterisks. This time we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the first 2 stitches of the round. So there's my first. Here's my second. And then an increase in the third stitch. And then just like the round before, we're going to repeat that sequence of 1 single crochet, 1 single crochet, increase 6 times total to have 24 stitches at the end of round 4. So we'll repeat that pattern again, 1 single crochet, 1 single crochet, increase. And we'll just keep repeating that until we are all the way around. Alright, that's the end of round 4 for me. So for rounds 5 through 9, all we need to do is put 1 single crochet stitch in each of the 24 stitches we created in round 4. So remember to move your stitch marker up each time you start a new round. And I will see you back here whenever I have finished the last single crochet stitch of round 9. Alright, so I just finished my last single crochet of round 9, but before I move on to round 10, I wanted to stop and point something out that may be happening with your work. So I'm going to take my crochet hook out. You don't need to, you can leave yours right where it is. There is a chance that your work has been working inside out. So a pretty good tell is that the magic ringtail that we trimmed is kind of hanging on the outside of your work. And then second, your stitches have these little lines that run through them. If your piece looks like how mine looks right now, this is technically the wrong side on the outside. So now's a good time for you to sort of flip your piece so that magic ringtail's on the inside, and your stitches have more of this V or X shape if you're a yarn under, yarn over single crocheter. So I like to make sure that my piece is facing the right way before I start decreasing. Alright, so now that we've double checked that our work is facing the right direction, we're ready to go ahead and start in on round 10. So for round 10, we've got a new pattern to repeat. So let's start with what we know how to do already. We're going to put one single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches of the round. And then we need to decrease. So the way I like to do mine is I'm going to single crochet these next 2 stitches together. So I'll take my hook and go through that next stitch, yarn over and draw up a loop. Then do the same thing in the stitch right after. Go through, yarn over and draw up a loop. And then yarn over and draw through all 3 loops on my hook. So there's that first repetition of the pattern inside of those asterisks. We need to repeat that 6 times total all the way around this round. So that's 1 single crochet, 1 single crochet, decrease. Okay, that's the end of round 10. For round 11, we're going to be adding in the feet. So we'll start by putting 1 single crochet stitch in the first stitch of the round. Then we're going to decrease. And then in our next stitch, we need to make a 5 double crochet bobble stitch. So to do that, we're going to start by wrapping the yarn around our hook. And then we're going to go through the next stitch. Then we'll yarn over and draw through that next stitch and a nice tall loop up on our hook. Then we're going to yarn over and draw through the first 2 loops on our hook. And that's our first stitch of our 5 double crochet bobble. We need to make 4 more of those inside of that stitch that we put the first one in. So we'll wrap our yarn around our hook, go through that same stitch, yarn over, drop a nice tall loop through the stitch, then yarn over and draw through the first 2 loops on our hook. So you can see I have 3 loops on my hook now and 2 of these coming out of that stitch. Wrap our yarn, so there's my 3rd, my 4th, 1 more, and my 5th. So you can see I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these coming out of that 1 stitch, and 6 loops total on my hook, the 5 stitches I made, and the 1 loop left over from my last stitch. So to finish this bobble stitch off, we're going to yarn over and draw through all 6 loops on our hook. And then we're going to make a nice tight chain 1 by yarning over and pulling through the loop on our hook. I also like to take this bobble stitch and scoot it over towards my hook with my thumb and my index finger on my hook hand, just to make sure that it's not hiding the stitch right next door to it. Alright, so now that we have that bobble stitch done, we need to make a decrease, so single crochet these next 2 stitches together. So you kind of have to stretch your hook down to get to that next stitch. And we'll start our decrease, so I'll go through my next stitch as well. And then decrease these 2 together. And then I have to always pop the bobble stitch out towards the surface of my work, so I just hook my index finger behind and push those stitches out so they're on the surface and not inside of the body. Alright, so we're going to make another decrease. So we've got 1 already, so we'll make a second one. So there's my second decrease. And now we need to make the other 5 double crochet bobble to be the other foot. So we'll go through our next stitch, wrap our yarn around our hook, go through, yarn over and draw up a nice tall loop, and then yarn over and draw through the first 2 loops. And just like we made the first one, we're going to make that second 5 double crochet bobble the same way. Alright, there are all 5 of my stitches. I'll yarn over and draw through all 6 loops on my hook, and then make a chain 1. Scoot those bobble stitches over towards my hook. Then we're going to put a single crochet stitch in the next stitch of the round. You want to make this one pretty tightly too, to kind of stretch your hook down. And then we'll need to pop the bobble stitches out towards the front side of the work. Alright, so next up we need to decrease. So after our second bobble stitch we'll have 1 single crochet and then a decrease. And then to finish this round off, we're going to repeat the pattern 1 single crochet, decrease, another 2 times. So 1 single crochet, decrease, then 1 single crochet, decrease. Alright, so at this point we need to add the safety eyes. So I'm going to take my hook, I'm going to pull the loop on it long, take my hook out, and then flip my work over so that I am looking at the bobble stitches and they are facing down. So these are the feet, and we need to position the eyes between rounds 7 and 8 and in line with the feet here. So I'm going to take my first safety eye and I'm going to count down from round 1, which is this magic ring here at the top, until I get to round 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then between these 2 rounds and close to where the foot is. So you can see it kind of hits just the inside of the foot. Then we'll position the second safety eye in between the same rounds, so round 7 and 8, but this time in line with the other foot. You can see those are the safety eyes placed. Feel free to move these around though as you see fit. But once you've got them positioned, we're going to go ahead and snap the plastic backs that come with them on the inside. Alright, so those are my safety eyes attached. Next, we need to stuff the inside of the body. Alright, so I've got the body stuffed, and I'm ready to go ahead and reinsert my hook and make the last round on the body. Alright, so for round 12, we need to decrease in each stitch all the way around, but we need to be careful when working over the bobble stitches because that chain 1 that we made adds an extra stitch. So let me show you how I like to do this last round of decreases. So our first decrease, just a normal looking one, we're going to go through the next 2 stitches, single crochet them together. And then if you look here at our bobble stitch, you can see that chain 1 that we made to close it off. I like to just completely skip over this chain 1 on my Oddish. Sometimes I'll include it and make a single crochet 3 together, but I find that with it being so close to the bottom of the body, it doesn't actually make much of a difference if you include it in on the decrease. So we'll go to the stitch on the right hand side of our bobble stitch, start our decrease, and then skip over that chain 1 that we made. It's like directly centered on the top of the bobble stitch. Just skip over it completely and stretch your hook over to that decrease that we made on the other side of that first bobble stitch. And we'll decrease these 2 stitches together. That's the same thing here. So that second decrease we made between and then this stitch on the bobble stitch, we're going to decrease these. And then here's that chain 1. It's centered right on the top of that bobble stitch. We're going to just skip right over it and go to the single crochet stitch on the other side to start our next decrease. And then just continue decreasing the last 4 stitches together. So there's my second to last decrease and my final decrease. Alright, so we're ready to fasten off. Let's take our stitch marker out. And then we're going to slip stitch to that marker's stitch. So yarn over and draw through, and then draw that last loop through to slip stitch. Then we need to cut a tail to sew with. 6 inches or so ought to do it. And we'll pull that final slip stitch until the tail we cut goes all the way through as well. And then give that tail a final tug to tighten that slip stitch down. Then we need to use the tail that we cut to sew through the 6 front loops of these last 6 decreases that we made. So let's go ahead and get this threaded through the eye of our yarn needle. And then we're going to go through the front loops of each stitch to close this last round off. So we've been working through both the front and back loop. We need to snag the one closest to the surface of our work, so just this front loop here. So kind of sew up and in between the loops of the stitch. And rotate. And just keep sewing through these front loops until we have all 6 of them. So there are all 6 for me. I'm going to pull that tail to cinch that last round closed. And then we need to tie a knot and weave this tail in. So I like to tie a surface knot by looping my tail over the surface of my work, making this O shape, and then grabbing some of the stitches underneath where that O is. I usually like to try to snag that slip stitch that I made. You can see I've sewn through there and up through that O shape. And what that's going to do is it's going to take the O shape we made and wrap it tightly around the tail that we're sewing up through, which ties a knot on the surface of our work. And then we'll weave this tail in by sewing it down through the center of that cinched round and then just out through any place on the body. And when you pull, it's going to pull that knot to the inside and hides our tail on the inside of our work. Then you can unthread your yarn needle, and by pulling the tail tightly and trimming close to the surface of our work, that weaves the tail in, and we can discard anything we didn't use. Alright, so that's Oddish's body done. Let's move on to the leaves. Alright, so next up we need to make Oddish's leaves, and we're going to be using this sort of key lime green color. So we're going to need to start with a slip knot and then chains to make each leaf. So the way I like to tie my slip knots is I like to tie them so that when I pull the tail, it tightens the slip knot. So I take my tail and fold it behind my working yarn, pinching my fingers inside of the loop that I've made, and then take the tail and wedge it between those two fingers, and then slide the loop around my fingers off and pull what I pinched through to tie a slip knot. Now you don't need to do this, this is just the way that I like to do it. I like it to tighten when I pull this tail rather than tighten when I pull on my working yarn. But once you've got your slip knot formed, we'll go ahead and slip our crochet hook inside, tighten it down, and we'll start by chaining 6 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then in the second chain from our hook, not counting the loop on our hook because we don't ever count that one. So 1, 2, in that second chain, we're going to make a slip stitch. So I'm going to catch just this side of the chain because we're going to be coming back and working up the other side. So I'll slip through just that side of the chain, yarn over, draw up a loop, and then draw that loop through the only other loop on my hook to make a slip stitch. Then in the next chain stitch, I'm going to make a single crochet. And in that next chain, I'll make a half double crochet, so I'll wrap my yarn around, go through that next chain, yarn over, draw up a loop, then yarn over and draw through all 3. In the next chain stitch, I'm going to make both a half double crochet and a double crochet. So we'll start with our half double crochet. And pull through all 3. And then a double crochet, so wrap around, go through our next stitch, yarn over and draw up a loop, then draw through 2 loops, and then draw through the remaining 2 loops. So you can see I've got a half double crochet and a double crochet coming out of this chain. Alright, so to do the bottom of the leaf, we're going to make 3 double crochet stitches on the right hand side of our slip knot, and then flip over and put the other 3 double crochet stitches on the far side of the slip knot. So I'll start by adding a double crochet stitch on this side. There's my first. Here's my second. And my third. And then we're going to swing around and put the other 3 in this side of our slip knot. So I'll yarn over, and I'm going to go through and make my 4th double crochet stitch, the first on this side. So make 2 more. Alright, so you can see I've got 3 double crochet stitches on one side, and then these 3 helped me kind of swing around the other side. At this point, I like to take the slip knot tail and pull it tight to tighten the bottom of my work. And then I'm going to weave this in as I work the next few stitches. So in the chain on this side, we're going to go in reverse order of what we did on this side of the leaf. So we'll start by placing 1 double crochet stitch. So I'm going to go through the other side of this chain and lay my tail for my slip knot over my hook as well. Make a double crochet stitch. And then in that same chain, I'm going to put a half double crochet too. So keep working your tail in as you go. You can see I'm holding it behind my work. The next chain, we're going to put a half double crochet. the next chain we'll put just a single crochet. And you can stop working your tail in at this point. In this last chain stitch, we're going to put a slip stitch. Then to close off the top of the leaf, we're going to make a single crochet stitch going through that first slip stitch we made on the other side. So we'll just slip our hook through that slip stitch on the other side, yarn over and draw through that slip stitch, and then yarn over and finish our single crochet stitch at the top of the leaf. Last, to make the vein detail on our leaf, we're going to slip stitch down the center, and that also helpfully sends the tail to the bottom of the leaf, which we're going to use to sew the leaf onto Oddish's head. So to start our slip stitches, rotate your leaf so that your working yarn's like underneath the leaf. Then we're going to take our hook and push it through where that first chain stitch is. Your slip stitches are in that one. So push through, grab your yarn that's under your leaf and draw it up through, and then draw it through the loop on your hook to form your first slip stitch. Then we'll go through our next space between the chains that we worked in. This should be the one your single crochets are in. Grab our yarn and draw it through the loop on our hook. I'm just going to keep slip stitching all the way through every chain that we made at the beginning of the leaf. Alright, so that's the last chain. Then we're going to put one slip stitch in between the third and fourth double crochet we made. It should be centered at the very bottom of the leaf. So we'll go through and slip stitch between that third and fourth double crochet. And then it doesn't matter which you choose. You can choose the third double crochet or the fourth double crochet. There's no true center, but grab one of those stitches at the bottom. I'm going through the fourth here, and we'll make our slip stitch through, which takes us all the way to the bottom of the leaf. All right, so now we need to cut a tail to sew with. And we'll pull that last slip stitch we made until the tail we cut goes through and tighten it down. And then since we wove this tail in, we can give it a trim as well, which gives us one of the leaves for Oddish. So you'll need to make 2 more. I'm going to go ahead and make 2 more, and then I will come back here whenever it's time to assemble. Alright, so I have all 3 of my leaves complete, and I'm ready to get them attached to Oddish's body. So let's go ahead and grab Oddish, and I like to use a slightly sharper tapestry needle whenever I'm sewing inside of the bodies of an amigurumi. So I'm going to go ahead and thread one of the tails for my leaves through the eye of this needle. Alright, so now that I have my leaf threaded through the tapestry needle I'm going to be using, go ahead and grab Oddish, and we're going to sew the first leaf on so that it is centered between the eyes, but then set a few rows back from, well, forward from where the magic ring is. So if this is round 1, 2, I'm going to sew into round 3, centered between the eyes. I'm just going to go from front to back underneath that row, and then flip that leaf around so that the vein is facing front. And then I'm going to sew through the back side of the leaf and through that bottom slip stitch that I made. And pull pretty tight. And I'm just going to keep sewing through the bottom of the leaf, coming back up through that bottom slip stitch, sort of stacking the stitch so that the leaf is pretty secure on the top of the body. I find folks tend to pull them up by their leaves, so I want them to stay on and not fall off or go anywhere. Alright, so there's the first leaf attached. To secure, we're going to tie a surface knot really close to where the leaf is attached. So I'm going to loop that yarn over the surface of my work, grab a little bit of the fabric of the work, and sew up through that loop, and then pull. And then I'm going to sew straight down and out through the body, which tugs that loop to the which tugs that knot to the inside and weaves the tail in. So there's the first leaf attached. Let's go ahead and get our second leaf attached. So the second leaf is going to be sewn on at an angle and behind where our first leaf is. So it's also closer to the center of the top of the head. So I'm going to send my needle into round 2 from front to back and pull to bring my leaf onto Oddish's head. And then I'm going to hold it at an angle like this while I attach. So I'm going to come back up through that bottom slip stitch here on the back of the leaf from back to front. Pull pretty tight and keep that leaf at an angle as you sew it on. I'll just keep stacking that stitch just like I did with that first leaf. And I'll fold that first leaf up so you can see we've got our second leaf here at an angle. We'll fasten off the same way we did our first leaf, making a surface knot. And then sewing down into the body to pull that knot to the inside. All right, there are 2 of the leaves attached. Let's go ahead and attach the third and final leaf. And then if you find your front leaf likes to sort of wilt a little bit, mine do this sometimes, but also sometimes they don't. It really kind of just depends on how you've attached the leaf. I will sometimes tack this front leaf up by sewing from this last leaf through the front of that front leaf. Sort of holds it up against. And I'll come back around and attach it to the second leaf that I sewed on. It kind of helps anchor it in place. So you can see that stitch holds them together and holds that front leaf up. Sometimes that front leaf will wilt a little bit. I don't know, it's weird how sometimes it will and sometimes it won't. So that's just a secret trick in case yours is kind of wilting on you a little bit. So if you've done that, we're going to go ahead and send this tail back down into the body. So I'm going to sneak it along the inside back of the second leaf that I attached. And then I'll tie a surface knot over here. And sew straight down through the body. Then once I've got them all attached, I can trim these tails that I wove in. And that wraps up Oddish's tutorial. So if you'd like, you can also grab your terracotta pot here at this time and sort of just tuck him in so he looks like a little faux potted plant. So as always, thank you for watching, and if you haven't already, maybe consider subscribing to my channel. A subscription tells me that you like what I do and you'd like to see more, and I always appreciate the support. Alright, as always, happy crafting everyone!